Recording in progress. Hello, all. This is Tammy Brunk, and I am speaking to you at the very beginning of June with a June astrology update. And I'm beginning today with a little bit about the Sagittarius full moon. Now, this Sagittarius full moon is exact tonight as I'm speaking. It's going to be just in about 4 hours from when I'm speaking now. So I'm actually transmitting very close to the exact moment of the full moon. But the some of the really powerful features of it, you can feel even tomorrow night. And I'm going to speak about why that is here in a moment. But let me go ahead and do a little bit of a download of this full moon's energy because we're going to be feeling it over the next few days. But and this kind of launches, in a sense, the energy for the month. Even though, we often think of the new moon as being the energy that sets the tone. This is a very, very powerful portal, this full moon. And so it's also opening us up to energies that we're going to be working with for a while. Okay, so I want to share my screen. And okay, so Sagittarius full moon. Some of what we have featured here is we have the moon is at 13 degrees Sagittarius. Now, many of you will have already heard that this is a very significant place in the sky because it is aligned with the great attractor, or some scientists call this the Shapley supercluster, which isn't nearly as fun as the great attractor. The great attractor is an area in space that's quite mysterious, but what we know about it is that there is some force located in this region that is pulling our galaxy and many others toward it at a very rapid pace. So there's this feeling of being pulled, being drawn in, being magnetized by some massive force that we don't fully understand. So the great attractor is a very significant part of the chart. Personally, my Black Moon Lilith, true node, is located at the great attractor. So I'm really feeling this energy the way I feel Lilith, and this is not, everyone does not see this, but I definitely feel Lilith as a rewilding energy, an energy of remembering our original kind of oh gosh, like the wildness, the ferocity of who we are, our teeth and our claws. That's just me. That's the medicine that I'm probably going to be transmitting as I'm speaking to you because it's coming in really quickly. But I think the other reason I'm speaking into Lilith is because one of the features of this moon is that Lilith is actually quite close to Venus. So we are getting these big transmissions. And part of the reason why I speak of Lilith as being about rewilding is because I'm going to share an image here that I like to share as well. I feel like the image itself gives some really deep transmissions. This is something many of you will have seen before. It is a famous image. It's called the Bernie relief. For those of you who are watching, not just listening, I'm going to see. Hopefully you can see this share. I'm going to go back to the I'm going to go back to the chart in a moment, but I'm just going to invite you to tune in to this image. And if anybody who's listening, I'm just going to describe it. So often this is described as Inanna or as Ishtar, this goddess, this deity, this figure. But I actually feel that earlier than that, and you'll often see it referred to as Lilith. I kind of feel like this is actually more Lilith. Lilith meaning the deity, the feminine figure who is mentioned in the texts of the early Judeo-Christian religions. And she was Adam's first wife, right? But if you study who she was in ancient Sumer, you will discover as well that she was most likely a land spirit or a nature spirit. And this is what I love about this image, and this is why I feel this is probably Lilith. So, okay, I'm talking about the full moon in Sagittarius, right? But I'm also talking about Lilith herself, because Venus and Lilith are conjunct. If you follow, Lilith can be either calculated by mean, like this is a midpoint in space that's calculated mathematically, or true, meaning it's the actual position of Black Moon Lilith, which is a point in space. So when you calculate her in the way that I'm talking about, true Lilith, then she's with Venus. So we're connecting with her. We're feeling her be transmitted through the Venus mysteries in the sign of Cancer. So, okay, going back to Lilith. So there's this sense that I've had about her for a very long time, that she is the part of us. She connects to the part of us that still has our wings. You can see this deity, this goddess has her wings. She has owl claws. She is, she's got this connection to her wilder self. And this is quite unusual when you look at deities from the Western tradition, like ancient Sumer, which would now be understood. That area would have been modern day Iraq, right? So this is the cradle of Western civilization. We don't see a lot of deities like this that are kind of emerging of the human and the more than human world. However, if you work with deities in Mesoamerica, in the Toltec traditions, or Mayan lineages of spiritual deities, pantheons, you will often find that these deities are they're chimeric. They are deities that carry human qualities, but also more than human qualities. So they're part lightning bolt, part snake, part creature of some version. And so, I always feel, because have a great love of Lilith, that she really represents the part of us that feels like this wild child who feels connected to the elements, who, when you hear the thunder, you feel the thunder inside your being. When you see the lightning crack, your whole body is electrified, right? You're connected to these wilder mysteries. And I think in our modern world, we need her. We need her. So, first of all, that was a very Lilithian thing to do, right? This was not pre-organized. This was not on the agenda. But it feels important. It feels like she wanted to be seen. Feels like she wanted to be presenced in that moment. At least that's what I was seeing. Okay, so that is something to understand about this moment that we're in. And actually, it's important to say as well that, again, what I'm speaking into isn't just tonight, isn't just the full moon. I'm going to talk about the full moon here now, but I'm also going to be speaking into the larger energies that take us into the month of June. Okay, so Venus and Lilith, that's going to be active now for about the next week, really, what I'm speaking into. So open up your wild heart, connect to the wildness within, connect to your inner creature. There's a wonderful somatic practitioner, among many other things, Kimberly Ann Johnson, who I really love. My younger sister, Tasha, who is a deeply gifted healer and craniosacral therapist, she turned me on to her. And Kimberly Ann Johnson, one of the breakthroughs that she's really made for women is that she entered the field of somatic experiencing, of somatic work, and she really introduced. Okay, so for anyone who follows this body of work, that's very effective actually for dealing with trauma in the body. A big component, or a big piece of the somatic work, has to do with really working with our sympathetic responses of our nervous system. And those include, for example, you've heard of fight, flight, freeze, right? Those are common. It's, if you go into trauma, you're going to go into one of those modes. We're learning about that more and more. It's all over the place now in the collective. But one of those modes that really some of the original founders of this movement didn't really focus on was fawning. And fawning, in fact, they would say it's not quite as significant or potentially problematic. What Kimberly Ann Johnson said was that no, fawning, in fact, especially for women, is highly problematic, because part of what it does is it causes us to, and for those who don't know, fawning, and I'm not a psychologist, right? So please forgive me, this is my own layman's way of articulating it. Fawning is that response that we have, men and women both do this, but it's when we feel unsafe in a given situation, and we learn the strategy, often as children, to do everything we can to make the other person feel good. Fawning, we know what fawning means, right? In order to feel safe. It's really Sometimes it involves stroking their ego. It's an eagerness to make sure the other person feels good. And it's, we make fun of people like this. We make fun of that part of ourselves. It's over people pleasing, codependence kind of come in this field. I'm throwing around a lot of terms. But I think you can feel it, right? We know when we go into that response. However, part of what is so powerful about acknowledging this response is to say, you know what, it actually often started in a way that our literal safety, our sense of belonging, our sense of being loved was connected to this. And so what Kimberly Ann Johnson really brought forward, among many other things, was that we need to really pay attention to and really tune into where we go into a fawning response, become more conscious of it, and also to recognize how, in a sense, how natural it is that we have adopted this response, even though it's actually quite harmful to us in the long run. So we want to heal it. Wow, I just went way off there. But it feels relevant. I hope some of you listening, thank you for listening, and hopefully this is beneficial for you. Look up Kimberly Ann Johnson, her work. I think it's worthwhile for me to even have veered like this just so that you can check her out. What I'm ultimately getting at is that one of the areas where Kimberly Ann Johnson really has brought some important work forward is where she helps women to engage with their inner predator. Now, what she speaks into is that as women, often we identify more as prey. And she was watching these videos in this work that she was doing, and she was being asked to watch a rabbit be attacked, I think, by some predator. And she identified with the rabbit. She was feeling for the rabbit. She was not identifying with the predator. And this brought all of this to mind for her as to why it is that women we need to actually begin to learn to identify with, embody our own inner predator as well as the prey. Interesting. Today this comes up because actually I was just speaking to my neighbor and my former partner whose German Shepherd just attacked an animal. And I had my own response of feeling really bad for that animal. Then I just learned probably the animal actually attacked the dog first, right? Okay, predator prey, big, huge topic. So part of why I feel that I'm speaking into Black Moon Lilith, I'm speaking into the goddess Lilith, as well as the astrological, astronomical um, body or point in space, is that she feels to me to be more, even though she's got the owl talent, she's got the wings, a bit more of that predator energy, rather than the one who's going to get eaten, right? And so to me, again, it feels like this is something nuanced for us as women often, and those who are listening who are men who also or non-binary who also orient more on the end of the spectrum of feeling more like prey, that we actually learn what it feels like in our bodies to have more of that response of going after something or having that power in the body. It's actually hugely important. And I think actually, in fact, in our modern times, accessing that aliveness in our body consciously is hugely important. Okay, I'm just gonna say that this feels important due to the Lilith factor. Hard to say. Okay, so this does relate as well very much, I think, to this full moon in Sagittarius. The reason being that Sagittarius as a sign. Okay, so understand this is a full moon. It's tonight at 10:42 p.m. Central. And so a full moon in general is when the sun and the moon are opposite, right? So you've got this polarity, these two opposite signs. And so when the sun is shining on the face of the moon, we are working with the medicine of these two astrological energies, both of them perfectly in balance. And so there's the desire, there's this way that we're each every full moon, you can actually learn this beautiful dance between these two opposite but very related energies. So we'll focus on Sagittarius first. Okay, Sagittarius moon. near great attractor. So we know there's this very powerful kind of magnetizing energy that we're moving into tonight as the moon activates. I know some of you, many of you will listen to this after the fact. So just understand, I will talk in future videos as well about the great attractor. It's good to know about it. Understand as well that on some level, when you're listening, you can move through time and space. You can be activated by the energies that I'm transmitting as we speak. I am a big believer in that. Not to speak into just the woo of it, but yeah, we live in a time where we really can move through time and space much more easily than what we even used to understand. Okay, so Sagittarius full moon. The sign of Sagittarius first is a fire sign. And so it's very much fire has to do with it's oriented to spirit, among other things. So it's very transformational. If you ever look at fire, it's just it weaves, it's alive, it's very powerful. If you put something in fire, it changes form completely. It has, a whole continuum of energetics that you can work with fire. It's sacred across many cultures. So a person or an energetic of fire, when the full moon is in a fire sign, there's this very active energy. It wants to move, it wants to transform, it wants to, be very, just very, there's an alchemy to it that's very powerful, potentially dangerous. The fiery energies can burn out. That's part of what can happen. But you want to create the space in your system, and you want to create the space with this full moon energy for your body, for your mind, your psyche, everything to feel expansive. You want to be able to feel expansive. You might want to move your body. You might want to dance. You might want to take a long run or do a good workout. But fire, Sagittarius likes to move. It likes to be on the land. It likes to make big movements. As a Sagittarius sun woman, when I was a young woman, when I was a teenager, I would go out. My favorite thing was I was learning how to dance, like to dance hip hop music to these friends I had who were just really good dancers. These young guys from St. Louis, they were teaching me all these moves. I had so much fun. But I remember I would go out on the dance floor and I was big. I was just big movements. And for a girl, you weren't supposed to make those big movements. I would get so much, people would give me such a hard time because okay, let's face it, I also have this Gemini mind. So getting into my body's been a big deal. So I'm just like flailing, making these big movements, having so much fun. I feel like, yeah, so that can be Sagittarius, big movements, big energy, expansive, fiery. There's some, some of that wild energy I'm speaking about. Sagittarius needs that expressiveness, that movement, that dynamic medicine. Okay, so we've got that energy to Sagittarius. We also have, with the energy of Sagittarius, interestingly, we also have the medicine of spiritual truth and gnosis, wanting to really be alive, to wanting to be tapped into what is true for me, what's my inner knowing, and how connected am I to my spirit. These are some questions of the Sagittarius full moon. Also, the question literally I feel that comes up a lot has to do with spiritual integrity. And again, so truth telling, there's this truth telling layered to Sagittarius, where, and this is actually the polarity. And I will tell you, I know this polarity because I was born at a full moon. It was a Sagittarius full moon. So, excuse me, it was a very near a Gemini full moon, excuse me, and other opposite time of the year, but the same energies, the same polarity. And what I know about this polarity is that there is a true balancing between the Gemini territory of both and, meaning, it's kind of like that relativism, right? It's relativism. So it's kind of like saying, well, it's, pretty much everybody has their perspective and everybody gets to do that. You can have this person over here saying this thing, that person over, truth is relative, right? There are as many truths as there are human beings on the planet, actually beings in general. That's a Gemini perspective. Also Aquarius, by the way. We have a lot of Aquarius and Gemini in the field. So a lot of this kind of relativity or subjective kind of thinking. So yeah, so according to Gemini, the interest is I'm going to just gather a lot of information. I'm going to look at everything. I'm going to see what's out there and try to gain some sense of information gathering to tell the story, to be able to speak into, to sing a song, to express something that's woven from the thread of the larger world story, right? And so there's that with Gemini, there's no judgment. There's no, it's not as much about discernment from a spiritual lens. It is more about the actual human capacity and desire to have lots of different kinds of experiences and perspectives. From the words of my teacher, Gemini is about the full experience of polarity and duality and really exploring every facet of that and then moving beyond that into something bigger. Sagittarius, on the other hand, actually does have a great passion for the little truth and the big truth. The little truth meaning, well, what's my truth? In this given situation, how do I actually feel about this situation in my life? How do I actually feel about, or what are my values or principles or thoughts about this particular topic? Um, it's to actually sort through that and ask for yourself, well, and I see, and if you're balancing Gemini and Sagittarius, then you may be really looking at other people. We do that a lot now on social media, etc. Well, what does this person think? What does that person think? What does this best friend think? And if it's Gemini, you're not really that attached to coming up with some noble truth that takes from all those different layers. However, if you have strong Sagittarius and the moon is kind of the focus right now, Sagittarius moon, it actually is for you after you've done your information gathering to dare to be bold enough, whether it's in your journal or you having a conversation with someone you care about that's about what's true for you, um, or whether it's putting it out there in social media, whatever it is. I know it's sometimes dangerous, but authentically to say, well, this is, I've looked at these things and this is my truth. This is the truth that vibrates in this system. And ultimately, that truth may be informed by the mind and by the information gathering. Of course, that's part of it. But ultimately, that truth also emerges from your lived experience. It emerges from your right to see the world through your eyes. And I think sometimes, for many of us, I will say this is one of my biggest challenges. Many of us are trying so hard to see through other people's perspectives, especially if we're empathic, sensitives, that we actually almost don't feel like we can give ourselves permission to really drop into, well, this is true for me. It's very different than the way this person feels. And that's okay. That's all right. I get to have my gnosis, my truth that looks different. It's a huge thing. I've recently had this experience after years of being in a situation where I have tried so hard to really almost, I will say, I'm throwing around the words. I have a tendency towards codependence. It's something that I have struggled with greatly, and it is an addiction. I'm using strong words here, but it's true. It can be a useful lens. And so what I've recognized is in this given situation for almost 4 years now, I have a person in my life and I have really in so many ways, partly just for love and partly because of deep training and cultural conditioning from the earliest years for survival's sake. I can see where we are very, very, very different people. But I have tried so many times in so many ways to open my consciousness to honor and acknowledge this person's way, their perception, their worldview, their way of navigating the world. I have seen how I have so deeply desired to create a space for them to feel love for themselves, and also create a peaceful space where I'm not continually battling with this person who's important in my life. And I'm finally at the point where I'm recognizing, and this almost feels like a spell has been broken. Oh my God, like I actually feel quite differently about many things. And there's a little grief there too. And there's a lot that I have pushed away about what I know through my lived experience and through the blueprint of my soul, my frequency, my priorities, that I have in some ways abandoned. And sometimes we do that. And so I'm in this place of reclaiming the places. It's differentiation, reclaiming. What is my truth? What's true to me? It is not violence to anyone else for us to know deeply what my truth is, and to not bow in those places of truth, and knowing that truth will change. But for most of us, we actually have some areas of inner gnosis or truth that, this is arguable, but that will remain, some layer of that truth will remain, it will continually expand, but the tone or the frequency or the theme of it will remain true. I would say for me, one of those is, what remains true for me is I deeply believe, for me, a truth is that, um, I will say my truth, my truth, the gnosis from my own lifetime is that, when we live our lives from a place of deep reverence and gratitude, that life works for us. One of my truths is I actually deeply believe that magic and miracles are actually incredibly possible. It's simply that we really need to surround ourselves with other people, with belief systems, we need to put ourselves in the field of community, of our immediate surroundings, where we see and feel many other people who can cultivate with us these beliefs that we can do things differently. I will say it that way. We can do things differently. That things don't need to remain stuck in the ways that they are. All right, I'm way out there now. Okay, so Sagittarius full moon. What's your truth? What are some truths that you have bent, or that your own personal truth that you have abandoned, that you haven't been willing to stand in because you felt that it would threaten someone else's truth? This is something to ask yourself. And are you willing to be courageous enough to stand in that truth, to embody it? You don't have to push it on someone else. However, are you being unapologetic or transparent about your actual truth, your experience, what you see, how you feel things? Are you willing to do that, even if sometimes it might make other people feel uncomfortable? Are you willing to take up that space? Again, I actually feel like that's also the great attractor, right? Like there's this magnetic energy that is us, and it's important for us to step into the field of ourselves, to be who we are. I think that I'm also doing a little foreshadowing of the movement from the nodes, South Node into Libra. And we're going to have about 2 years where the South Node in Libra is going to take us through the full territory of codependence, the places where we abandon ourselves in order to please others, among many other things for the shadow side of Libra, and take us down into the very root of what it actually means to be deeply bonded and connected to another, to honor the self and to honor the other. This is deep, powerful work, not for the faint of heart and not easy for most of us. It's deep and potent work. And, as Ram Dass would have said, love and relationship really is the yoga of our time. This is where many of us face our deepest challenges. We can be incredible humans in so many other arenas of our lives. We can be very successful, but when it comes to our closest personal relationships, excuse my language, it can be a shit show. And I will say that for myself personally. This is where my deepest learning has always been. So I'm going to leave that there. Full moon in Sagittarius. And I will say too, what has been happening is we have had this Grand Cross event that's been happening as Pluto has continued to move retrograde at zero Aquarius. And since Mars moved into Leo last week, and last week and a half about, Mars moved right into Leo, and then it was opposite Pluto. Pluto, of course, has been in a square. It's been squaring the nodes, North Node and the South Node. And because of that, and also Jupiter, because Jupiter and the North Node are together. I'll talk about that in a minute. But so there's been this Grand Cross. Now Mars is moving out of that Grand Cross energy, but look, here's Venus. She is quickly moving into that Grand Cross activation. So when you're in a Grand Cross, I've talked about this a little bit already. The Grand Cross energies can be pretty intense. It can feel like it looks jagged. If you work with a square, the Grand Cross, there are ways to feel that. There are the jagged edges that are just very, can feel pokey. You may have had experiences over the last couple of weeks where you've had to feel your edges. You've had to see the places where you must change. The tension has been building. This is true for me. I am making in my life a big shift. It's been coming for a long time. Finally, it's just so uncomfortable. I am like, it's over. I'm ending it. I'm finishing this chapter. That's where I'm at. So we have that the square energies can be felt that way. It's in Somatic astrology, we say it's crisis in action. So there's an energy like it's coming at you from the side. It's like, whoa, here comes this thing. I feel this intense energy. I need to respond. The other way to feel the square, and I really love this way of feeling it, is that the square can also be seen as, it's a four-sided figure. The number four is very stabilizing. I feel the square to be in some ways very masculine feeling, as opposed to, or in harmony with, or in complementary to the circle of the feminine medicine, or more yin and square. So the way I've been seeing this is that you need the square. It's like a magic box, right? That's where the magic happens, is in this strong, clear container. That's the square. And it's so cool because we've had the last 2 weeks, really, we've been having the energy of the square. And now for the next week, with Venus moving into this zone, we're also going to be continuing to feel that square energy, but it's shifting from the masculine holding, now the feminine stepping in, and the goddess herself is like, I can do a square. I can do a square. I can hold strong space. I can hold the sacred masculine energies. I can do that too, she says, as she moves into the sign of Leo, which is, of course, also like Sagittarius, like all the fire signs, quite masculine, not gender, not speaking gender, in terms of orientation, very masculine. So this is the square medicine still there. It's really causing us to have to feel very viscerally what needs to change, and we get to make those changes. And it's also a container within which we can grow, we can shift, we can change, and create new foundations. A lot of it is either asking the question, okay, the question for a lot of us is, how am I refining the foundations I already have that work for me? And which of my foundations are absolutely unstable? They do not work for me. Areas of my life that I am unhappy here, and these certain things are not going to change. So I have to change. I have to dismantle this foundation or completely leave it behind and build new foundations in these areas of my life. Now, most of us, it's important to recognize even if you have some areas of your life where you don't have very good foundations, and sometimes we have a lot of foundations we need to shift and change. But usually it's important to also acknowledge in those times that can feel very unstabilizing that you do have other foundations that you can rely on. So for myself personally, for example, I am once again in a place where I'm going to move. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to move, but what I do know is I'm moving out of where I am now. And this is a good decision. I have lots of choices. I have lots of possibilities. So this can be destabilizing on the level that, the place where I'm at on the land, my relationships in my immediate community, I've been trying to make it work. It's not working. It's not working. I'm recognizing that I've been pouring a lot into a place where the foundations, they're not gonna build. There's grief there. So I have to make a change. It would be easy for me to say or feel inside of myself, oh my God, like I don't have a home. I don't have a place on the land. I care about these things. I love the land. I've got no foundations. I've literally had dreams about this. Also, my business, my practice, it's been shifting and changing. I'm very curious about what part of my inquiry right now is what are my deep and true foundations for my business, for my practice? Because I sense very deeply that a change in location in my immediate surroundings is going to help me clear some of this distortion so I can peel away the layers and revisit the foundation of my practice, my business from a clear lens without some of the distortions of my immediate environment. That's me. So it's like, okay, sometimes we have to leave, go somewhere else to be able to really see something. That's a very Sagittarius thing as well. You need to climb the mountain to look and see the view. That's Sagittarius. I'm Sagittarius, Sun, Venus, Gemini, or Mercury. Lots of Sag, so I can tell you it's vital, it's necessary. Um, okay, so foundations. Again, the square has to do with foundations and shifting foundations. So you might have, on the other hand, very stable foundations. You're in a marriage that not perfect, there's no such thing, but you're good partners. You want to do the work. You're both doing the work, so you're building on this foundation. You're a parent, so you're building on the foundation already of your parenting experience, history, etc. But you might have something else in your life. Your spiritual life might be radically transforming. And so the old foundations are crumbling. And so you've got to start from scratch. It's like, it feels that way, right? Like, what's true? What's not true? A lot of people are going through this right now. In fact, I just did an interview with Sherry Burton, brilliant, brilliant woman. She was a Mormon. She deeply devoted to her faith, and she has gone through this whole process of having to really dismantle her core belief system and be in the inquiry of, who is God? The core questions spiritually. It's powerful. Many of us are going through that. I will say what I think we often end up finding is that even though we think that we're just completely excavating the foundation, usually it's important in these processes to dig into that and say, well, there's this beautiful gem right here. As I'm digging through here, there's this crystal that I found, and this beautiful thing, this realization I had, or this experience I had with this beloved that's absolutely vital to bring to my new foundation. Usually we have those things. It's very important to look for them. But again, there's a lot of tense energy with these squares. And you can feel my fire. There's fire, there's volatility. We can use this fire to change, use the fire to get the needed momentum to move forward, because it is important to be courageous enough to change at this time in the places where we need to change. And so sometimes you have to leap. Sometimes you have to, even if you're not comfortable with anger, you start to get the irritation, the frustration rises in you. Use it. You need to use it to affect change. And it might be later that you go back to that relationship, back to that situation, and then you find the jewels, then you find the gems. But it might be at first you're in the process of letting go, or of, in some cases, dismantling very radically. So to everyone out there, what are your foundations? What are the relationships, the location where you live, the work that you do, your relationship to spirit, all these different layers. How steady are these foundations? Where are you needing to kind of, more subtly kind of reorient, and where are you needing a big excavation? And that's a question for many of us. So that's at play as well. In this grand cross, mostly fixed grand cross energy, even though like Venus is activating it already, but she's out of sign. She's not quite in the fixed sign of Leo yet. Within that energy, we have Jupiter and the North Node at 3 degrees Taurus, and I'm speaking on the 3rd of June, but on the 31st, I'm sorry, June 1st, the North Node and Jupiter were conjunct in Taurus, and that was the exact moment. We're still feeling it. We were feeling it a few days before, but it's very much still active. Even though Jupiter's moved into 4 degrees Taurus, it's still very close. So this is we could feel this as a very beneficent, very supportive kind of nudge from the universe. Move forward, do your thing. It can feel good. What feels good? What do you want to move towards? What do you want? What really draws you into the future? North Node is like true north. It's our North Star. Jupiter is the dharmic or the spiritual path. They come together in the sign of Taurus. So your body has to be a part of this. Your body has to be included in this equation of what pulls me forward, what brings me to light, what am I enjoying, what in this human life feels good to me. To ask those questions. This is part of that question. But as you can see and feel, this is one of the points of that grand cross, and it's the grounding point. It's like the grounding cord. And so it's easy to remember, even if we're getting like all pulled around in all these directions, with these squares, the place where we want to root is in the North Node and the Jupiter in Taurus, meaning that we slow down. We take the time to really slow down the process and understand a lot's working inside of us. So again, like I said, sometimes you need to take action, you need to do those things, but even like for myself, I'm still doing it in a way where I'm slowing myself down. I'm staying in my body, taking action, taking lots of breaks and naps because there's lots of change. Taking the time as well to really savor and enjoy this earth around me, my close relationships, my experience of my body, tending to nurturing my physical well-being. That's hugely important right now. Hugely important. How can we learn to receive the gifts the universe wants to give to us? That's part of what the question is. There are 2 expressions that also I have found to be quite helpful, that connect again, I think more to the somatic world, but I've found them to be incredibly helpful. One is we can't really go any faster than the slowest part. You can think about that in battle terms. There's an infantry, a group of soldiers. They have to keep everybody fairly strong so that they can move forward, because if you've got somebody who's wounded or injured, somebody's going to have to carry them. So we have to take care of all parts of ourselves. And we also, if we're trying to rush ahead, well, we're going to have to backtrack, right? So yes, it's for us to move forward at an accelerated pace. And yes, there is the opportunity for massive flow, and Taurus is all about it. However, sometimes it's important to recognize you might have that experience of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because you make a little leap, or even especially a quantum leap, and then there will be this experience of needing to kind of come back and integrate, and that doesn't mean you did it wrong. I think that's the main point I want to make, is it didn't mean you did it wrong. And also, if you're the kind of person where you're just like, I've been stuck forever, I really want to move, I really need to change my life. Well, if you're like me, I've been that way in these last 4 years, because, I'm 50 years old. Like, I'm not 20. When I was 20, I jumped ahead. I did so many things. I changed. Now I'm more reluctant. Now I understand that I want all hands on deck. I want all parts of me on board for the big changes. Because if not, I've got these parts sabotaging, and it's going to just be so much harder than if I really do all the work to be fully ready to do the thing that I'm doing. So I say that to all of you out there who might feel like you're a mess or you don't have your stuff together. And why is it taking so long to leave this relationship or to move or to change my job or what say you, whatever it is, this arena. Maybe you can't go faster than the slowest part. Maybe a lot of times in those situations, there's a nuanced combination of yes, doing some of those hard things. Yes, when you get that current or that movement forward, take it, you know, move forward, make those steps, strengthen yourself, uh, do what you need to do to move forward. But if it's not as fast as you want it to be, just really be kind to yourself, be gentle to yourself, because it might be that there are certain layers of that integration process that are kind of mysterious to you that are still needing to integrate before you can make this next move. So you can't go slower than the slowest part or faster than the slowest part, and also go slow to go fast. Slow down, be fully in your body as you make your choices and decisions. Be willing to pause. And when you do that, when you do move forward and you're much more in your body, you're in your heart, you're present, then the decisions you make, you will often go into these states. You won't stay there forever, but you'll go into states where you'll really flow. You'll move super fast. Everything's easy. Synchronicities, miracles, signs, all that moving you forward. And you'll go into those zones. And it's nice to feel yourself going more and more and more. That is how life is to be. I deeply feel, yes, we move out of it. But if you are out of it more of the time than you are in the flow, something needs to change. That is my absolute belief. Something must change because it's not sustainable, because your body can't sustain it. Your soul and spirit that want to be in your body can't sustain it. So that's my belief. Okay, North Node Jupiter. So far, just to really acknowledge this, I've really been taking you through the territory of the very beginning of June, the full moon in Sagittarius, but it's really everything I'm speaking into is medicine we're going to be feeling for this first week. Okay. It's continuing through this first week. And it's also some of what we felt in the last week as I speak on June 3rd. So these are some big energies. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say that this is what I want to speak into with this Sagittarius full moon. These feel like the most important layers to bring in. And I will do another report that is the full June report today, tomorrow, or the next day, and share that. But for now, this is the full moon report because I want to get it out before it's actually the full moon. So no, this is kind of almost like more of a weekly update. Let me make sure I'm not losing or missing any other big layers to this before I shift. Okay, so yeah. So and it's a grand fire trine. That's another layer of the full moon. So there is some ease, there is some harmony. That's that flow I was talking about. As we kind of slow down, but we also are willing to take some action. And again, what I want to say about that is for myself, as I'm beginning to move forward and it's feeling faster, I can easily say, why did it take so long? But again, then I remind myself, no, you went slow this time. You're learning. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's not a failure. As we get older, we learn these things. So yeah, there's a grand fire trine. So there's some flow in there as we drop in, as we connect to the Taurus mysteries of being in the body in the present moment. And we also experience Saturn is square this full moon. And so there's also, again, this grounding energy that can kind of slow us down, but let's bless it because we want to move forward in a steady way. Again, even for me, I'm having this big change, but I'm taking a month to really sort out that for me, that's a lot what comes next. So there's ground there. There's steadiness, there's stabilization within the change. Then you have Mercury conjunct Uranus, which is like, okay, we're getting all these insights, all these new ideas flooding through. Open your consciousness to receive new, fresh ideas. And I think the North Node and also Jupiter and Taurus, when North Node and Jupiter come together, and for many other reasons, we have so much support from the realm of spirit, from the angelic realms. It's all coming in, it's pouring in, it's flowing in. So Mercury is getting downloads from the Uranian celestial realms. We're getting our minds are like, tune the mind, open the mind to receive the new directives, the new marching orders. What am I here for? What am I going to do tomorrow? Um, how does life want to move me? And, I just want to mention as well that I've been working with a new therapist who uses internal family systems, and it's been incredible. I haven't done really deep therapy for a while, and I've needed it. I'll just be honest, I have. And one of the layers that comes through with her so strong and clear, and the reason I chose to work with her is that she has very clear, she feels bright, clean, clear when it comes to spirituality. She's deeply studied, and especially she comes from the Christian tradition, but she's an omniclear. Her name's Christiana Herbert. I'm going to just name her. And she does work that I would actually classify almost as shamanic, but she doesn't use that term. But part of what I feel when I work with her, and a lot of our conversation even, has to do with, and not just her, but many other conversations I've been having lately, has to do with the reality that the moment we live in, so many doors, so many portals, so many ancient spiritual traditions are rising up, are now accessible through the web for everyone and anyone to access. And as she was recently saying, there would be tablets, scriptures, mystery traditions that historically a person would have dedicated a lifetime to studying with the intricacies of, the process of what in their system needs to be opened in order, and I'm saying all of this actually, in order to receive this spiritual insight or this, and then to be able to apply it in a way that's practical, that's embodied. And then also many times an individual who is really deeply trained in these things, they would be in a particular kind of context where they would have a lot of community support. Um, this, so those kinds of deep ancient mysteries that have a lot of power to them, they're being opened very rapidly. And so there's the need for discernment. There's the need for understanding, for example, if you work with different kinds of spirits, how do you discern who you really want to work with? And it's so vital to have tools and practices to say, okay, is this really in alignment with me to work with this spiritual system, to connect to this spiritual being? And I think, and I agree with her, and I've heard this and felt this in many other ways lately. It's a reminder, to always only work with beings that serve the greater good. If you don't serve the greater good, I'm not going to connect with you. That's very simple. And that really does kind of clarify things. So that's honoring the Sagittarius full moon as well. Spiritual maturity, Saturn and Pisces square the full moon in Sagittarius, spiritual maturity, grounding. We're being called into that because for those of us listening, for those listening who are spiritual teachers, spiritual entrepreneurs, coaches, shamanic practitioners, what have you, it really is for us to step up, and offer our gifts and skills. And at the same time, it's so hard to find true elders and just so much compassion for that. But as strange as this is going to sound, I'm from Missouri, I'm from the Midwest. Common sense and also tuning into the actual lived wisdom of your blood ancestral line, even if you have to go deep, those are two things that can really help. Those things can really help. Okay, so that feels like the most essential medicine for the week. I'm going to go ahead and do a June report on the next day or two. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and happy, happy, happy full moon in Sagittarius. It is, one last thing I'll say, tonight, Saturday night and Sunday night, especially Sunday night, when you see where the moon is rising on the eastern horizon, you will see, I'm sorry, Sunday, especially Sunday. It will be very close to the place where the sun is at the winter solstice. That's near galactic center. And it's going to be the furthest extreme to the south along the horizon. So look for that. It'll be very interesting. You'll notice, wow, the moon doesn't usually rise that far south. So this is something that happens. Well, it's a little different every month, but every month the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius. It moves from Sag to Capricorn. And when it rises in the east, even though it's not usually full at that time, it will be very far to the south. So that's an interesting thing to note. Okay. That is, oh, one other thing. Mercury will be with the Pleiades on Saturday. So, and Venus square Jupiter. Yeah, all of this I've already spoken it to. Okay. So much love, so much love. And I will see you in tomorrow, the next day, to talk about the June astrology. And blessings. And thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone, for listening and being here. I'm so appreciative.